Today, we have what hopefully will be a fun talk for you all. There's a lot of content. As I was putting this together, I went way overboard. So I apologize in advance. I'm probably going to have to go fast. I may end up rushing at the end. I'll do my best to watch the clock. If I run out of time, like there's already a section on marketing trends for 2024 that I know I'm not going to have time to get to. So we'll put those into a follow-up blog post and make sure you have access to some ideas on marketing trends. For today, we really wanted to focus on the staffing industry and what you're seeing, what you're likely to see, what some other really smart people in the industry told me you're likely to see, and just give you lots of ideas to get ready for next year. So, best question, and one that's the easiest for everyone to answer is, where are we now? What's going on in the staffing industry? What are we seeing? What are we hearing? And what's going on, particularly with the economy and its impact on staffing services. So overall, it's actually fairly good news. I know for a lot of you, it doesn't feel that way, particularly for those of you who are in travel, nurse, travel therapist, staffing, other allied, it doesn't feel that good, but technically our economy is not in a recession. So GDP grew 5.2% in Q3 and 2.1% in Q2. That's really robust growth for our overall economy. And there may be a little bit of a lag till we see the jump in staffing, but that's good news. Company profits increased 3.3% in Q3 after just 0.2% in Q2. So what does this mean? Businesses in the United States are selling more, they're making more money, they're using up their inventories, which is one of the reasons profits are up, but that means they're gonna have to build new inventories. And when they need to build inventories, that's good for the staffing industry. Interest rates are falling a bit. They're still, they feel painfully high, but they're well off of their peak. And they hopefully will continue to go down. At worst case, they're sort of stabilizing. Don't know that we'll see them going back to the near zero inflation rate that we saw for so long. It's felt normal because it's been for so long, but where we're at now is actually more normal than where we were. And inflation is back on track to a manageable 3.3%. I know the Fed wants to get that down to 2%, so hopefully they won't be raising interest rates again to make that happen. But that's a manageable level of increase in our costs. I know we're still all feeling it, especially if you go to the grocery store, that yeah, it may only be 3.3% more, but that's on top of a ton last year. So I think the lag you're going to see in inflation that will continue to hit our businesses is what happens to pay rates, and the demand for labor remains tight, which means there will be pressure to pay people more. And sort of the pressure to pay more goes right along with this one. Unemployment, it ticked a bit higher to 3.9% last month, but that's still super low. Statistically, full employment is around 5% unemployment. So we're below statistically full unemployment, which means, as you guys know, it may be hard to get job orders, but it's still hard to find people. And actually, that's good news for staffing, because when it's hard to find people, our clients need us. So this graphic here on the right just looked at a lot of different costs, and you can kind of see why it feels painful. A lot of the higher levels of inflation are in things we see at the grocery store. Although the one that's off the chart, I guess a lot of us are not going to be going to football or hockey or basketball games, because with a 25% increase, admission to sports is leading everything. But the next one on there is insurance. So that's another cost that does impact us personally. And I'm sure I've read, those of you who are industrial staffing, been reading that next year is going to be a hard market for work comp, which means significant increases in those costs in 2024. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news there, but that will be a big challenge for people in that segment of the staffing industry. All right, but I'm not going to be wearing my rose-colored glasses. Everything is not peachy. So the forecasts from staffing industry analysts are looking for this year to net out at about a 10% decrease for our industry. 8% in commercial staffing, 3% in IT, and here's the killer, 30% in travel nursing. And those of you who are in travel nursing, it's not that demand is down, it's that pay rates have continued to normalize, which have taken bill rates way down from their near $200 an hour peak down to, in some cases, just over $100 an hour bill rates. And we're seeing more and more of our clients trying to disintermediate, saying, can we go directly build our own nursing pools? Because they feel like they've been gouged by our industry for the last 3 years, even though none of you had anything to do with setting where bill rates were, setting where pay rates were. It was crisis pay. The hospitals dictated what happened, but now the staffing industry becomes the easy one to blame. So the fact that we're a scapegoat has both depressing demand for staffing, even though demand for nurses and therapists isn't down. And that combined with the reduction in bill rates has led to that 30% decline. SAA's forecast for next year isn't much more positive. Nursing continues to go down. The only big winners this past year have been engineering, locum tenens, and education, up 20%. There's another one I don't really have in there, which is staffing platforms, I think, are up 16%. That's later in the presentation. So some places, this is the United States and Canada, because most of the people listening in are from one of those two countries. So, what's going on? Staffing revenue change. You can see 2023 for Canada was -6, the US -10, and SIA is forecasting +3 for both countries for next year. So let's hope that or better holds true. Okay, so that's where we are. Where are we going? Now, closing my eyes, getting out my crystal ball, time to think about what next year might look like. And okay, it's not my crystal ball. I went to some people who actually look at the future, have researchers that do this, that study the economy, and try to figure out what's likely to happen. So the good news is everyone I looked at said a recession for the full year is unlikely. One of my favorite groups, ITR Economics, the folks at Staffing Industry Analysts have had them in to speak multiple times. They are predicting a mild recession for the entire year, not a strong recession, but really strong growth in 2025. Now, ITR tends to be a little more negative. Is that the right way to put it? They tend to be a little more cautious about forecasting growth. They actually looked at the first half of next year is when most of the pain will occur, and growth starting midway through 2024. So hang in there, folks, batten down the hatches. We're going to sell our collective tushes off for the next 6 months, and then we should see some improvement. OECD, this is an international organization. They are not predicting any downturn. They're actually predicting 1.5% growth, and not as optimistic about 2025, but another 1.7% for next year. So this isn't just US and Canada. They're looking at the global economy, but you guys know the US economy is closely tied to what's happening in the rest of the world. So mild growth globally should be good for the United States and good for staffing, especially with the talent shortage. Really strong growth would make filling job orders really, really tough, as you felt in 2019 and 2021. Bank of America, they're also not predicting a recession. They are saying it's going to be more like a soft landing next year, that we kind of hit the trough at 0.7% growth, so nothing to write home about. But that still means that we're growing. And 100% of where we are in the staffing industry today is where we'll be next year, plus another 0.7%. So that means if you're going to grow by more than 0.7%, you're going to have to figure out new strategies for sales and marketing and recruiting. You're going to have to take business away from someone else. You're going to have to fill a larger percentage of the open orders that you have. But in all three of these, the news is really not bad. And for those who like graphs, you can kind of see this was the up and down to the US industrial production. And since I think the majority of people listening in today are in the commercial staffing, you know that your business directly follows what goes up and down in industrial production. So you can see that 2024 kind of bottoms out middle of next year, and then we start a nice upward trajectory that goes through middle of 2025. They haven't forecasted further than that in this graph. All right, and staffing. Thank you, SIA, for your numbers. So the staffing industry is forecasted to grow at 2.4%, with industrial and engineering at 4%, IT at 7%. Travel nursing continued decline, not as bad as this year, but again, now we're starting to face less client demand as healthcare organizations look to do more internally, and even the open orders you have become as difficult to fill because of the shortage of healthcare providers. So it's not going to be easy, and it really means for those of you who are in healthcare staffing, you're going to need to be really working on your sales strategies, things that you almost haven't had to focus on very much because there was so much demand. And if you could recruit, you got job orders. Well, in 2024, we're going to be doing more of showing people how in this economy, using a staffing company, using a travel nursing company is the best financial decision. And you have to be partners with your clients and helping them to control healthcare labor costs. So what does this all mean for you? What are the implications? So the best way to avoid whatever's going on in the economy is not only plan ahead, but get ahead on your activities. So hopefully at this point in December of 2023, you are already well into a strategic sales and marketing plan that assumes a decline. Like in your head, you're already thinking the industry's going down, so here's my plan for what to do with it. I will say from reading ASA Central, even this morning's ASA Central, there are people who are looking for quick fixes. So how do I find a lead gen program I can just outsource meetings or appointment setting to? You're not likely to find someone who's better than your team at it. Maybe you can. Maybe there's some unicorns out there who are really good without any knowledge of the staffing industry, selling into HR and setting appointments. If you have some, share them in the chat for others to use. But we're going to have to think about ways to really differentiate our sales strategy, our sales process, our sales tools, and our sales training to prepare for next year. So let's get into some specific ideas. All right, so staffing next year, no two ways about it. We're pushing the boulder uphill. It's going to remain quite difficult. If you're not seeing it already, and I think everyone is, competition is going to be fierce because 90 some odd % or more of staffing company owners and sales managers are telling their salespeople, we need to make more calls. We need to get on the phone more. We need to be more aggressive. We need to invest more in technology, automation, AI, offshoring, using BDR functions to make more calls. And this morning with our team, we had a class we call Be a Consultant class. And we actually looked at sales strategies for our clients for next year. And one of the things I asked everyone to do is imagine that you worked in human resources in a mid-sized city. So I'm from Buffalo, New York. Let's picture Buffalo. Let's say in round numbers, there's 100 staffing companies in Buffalo. I think it's about 70 or 80, but let's say round numbers, there's 100. And every one of those companies has 2 salespeople. Now we have 200 salespeople. If you look in Buffalo and say, well, how many companies are good prospects for staffing services? Maybe there's 1,000, maybe more likely 500 companies that are really good prospects, strong regular users of staffing services. So now we have 500 companies and 200 salespeople. So I want you to think about what it's like being in your client's shoes. How many calls a day are you getting from a staffing company? What do those calls sound like? Are those companies offering something that's highly differentiated, a unique approach to staffing services? Or are those companies mostly talking about how their service is better and they can find people that the others can't, and how they can make life a little bit easier for the HR manager? Do most of those calls sound a lot alike? So when you're in the buyer's shoes, you're going to be getting overwhelmed with outreach from staffing companies, which is one of the reasons that outreach doesn't work as well. So to beat the competition, You can't act like the competition. There was a question in ASA Central this morning about what is an SOP, a standard operating procedure for lead gen. And I read it, and I haven't responded yet, but I will, thinking that I can't think of anything worse than for every staffing company to have an SOP for lead gen, because if there are 21,000 staffing companies in the US using the same playbook for lead gen, that is going to thoroughly commoditize the sales process. And that's the last thing any staffing company wants to do. They want to differentiate their sales process. They want a playbook that doesn't look anything like anybody else's playbook. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to create that playbook. Unfortunately, what goes with slower economic times, even if it's still in growth mode, is more margin pressure. And I'm guessing you're feeling this already. It's a killer. Labor is hard to find. You can't get good people. You can't get reliable workers. Yet your clients are going to tell you that the competition is offering a lower bill rate or a lower markup. And that's going to put more and more pressure on your margins, and holding your margins in 2024 is going to become harder. Does that mean you have to cut your prices? Absolutely not. But if you're going to charge more than another company down the street, you have to justify your price. So what are you going to do differently to provide faster talent, more reliable talent, a different service experience than everybody else? Because unless you can differentiate service delivery and that service experience, there's no reason for someone to pay a higher markup. And we did a sales survey. We're going to be publishing the results very shortly. We did it last summer and we continued in the fall, but looking at the challenges facing the industry when it comes to selling, and number one on everybody's list was simply getting through to people. It's become super tough with people working at home or inbox overload. We've got a situation today. I read a statistic that on average, each one of us, you, me, everybody else listening in today, we get 140 inbound emails per day. And if we're diligent about our follow-up on our emails, we can follow up with about 50 a day. So every day we work, we get further behind by 90 emails. And that's why we work nights and weekends deleting email to try to keep up. Between the difficulty of connecting with people and the fact that nobody answers the phone anymore, because now they can avoid answering the phone, it's become exceptionally hard to connect with people. So again, we're going to need new strategies if we want to make contacts and build relationships with buyers of staffing services. And sadly, recruiting is not going to get any easier. We have a structural shortage of talent in the United States. And with baby boomers retiring, it's going to continue to get worse. You're going to see more wage growth. That's going to make recruiting people for temporary jobs harder, because your clients aren't going to want to be the first ones to increase their pay rates. They may increase it for full-time jobs. So it's going to be harder to convince people to work as a temporary. Now, if you can show your clients market data and convince them that a higher pay rate is the path to success, you're probably going to be better at filling job orders, but that's a really hard sale to your clients. So you're going to need market data to show what companies are paying, what your most successful clients are willing to pay, and the impact of paying more. Back in the Great Recession, we worked with one of our clients looking at, is there a difference in the productivity of light industrial workers if they were low performers, average performers, and high performers? And we found some academic research to back up the fact that, in fact, it's not just logically true, but it's mathematically true that someone who is a high performer produces more output every single hour they work. And the cost differential to get that higher performer is far less than the value of the additional output they produce. So in an economy where your clients are going, we don't want to raise pay rates, if raising pay rates would get them more reliable workers, so they'd have lower turnover, lower absenteeism, higher productivity rates, less scrap and rework, happier clients, better outcomes in their healthcare facilities, if you can show them that there's a correlation between pay rate and business outcome, they may be willing to pay more. They may be willing to pay you more. Your bill rate can be higher. And you might even say, hey, we'll give you some consideration on markup because at a higher pay rate, yeah, we're making more per hour because of our markup. So maybe we'll shave that a bit so it's really win-win. I'm not advocating lowering prices, but I am advocating ways to partner with clients that create win-win. So if your average gross margin dollars per hour stay the same, you'd be okay taking a slightly lower markup. How about easing that recruiting bottleneck? Because if you can fill all the open orders you can, or you can be fastest to fill, you're going to make more placements. So one of the trends that's going on in the HR world, and you guys are probably more on top of this than I am, is skills first hiring. So instead of looking at somebody's past job titles and their specific work experience, we're going to try to look at the skills somebody have and not worry about where they went to college or their GPA or what job title they had, but really what skills have they learned. And in the article that I was reading in preparation for today's webinar, the data showed that skills-based hiring can increase the talent pool tenfold, because there are a lot of people who have skills who haven't had a chance to put them to work, or don't have a degree, or haven't had a long time working in a career with the right job title. So if you could open up a greater talent pool to your clients by partnering with them on skills-based hiring, you may get an edge at providing more talent, better talent, and probably most importantly in this economy, talent faster than your competitors. Because if you can fill the job orders faster, you win. This one sort of shocked me. There was a huge amount of people who retired in 2020 because of COVID. Well, a quarter of them are expected to come back to the workforce because they need money. Their portfolios may have taken a hit, their savings took a hit, and they may have found also they just want to work. So at least a quarter of those people are coming back to the workforce. What are you doing to attract that boomerang worker back to your staffing company? Do you make it easy for those people to find you? Do you demonstrate on your website that you place people like those kinds of early retiree candidates? So if you can attract those individuals, it's another way to break through the recruiting bottleneck. This one's really interesting is AI. So, no presentation in 2023 would be complete if you didn't mention AI at least once, and I'm going to mention it more than once. But there were some studies of call center workers, and I think this was done with a team that was in the Philippines, where this organization had something like 5,000 call center people. And they put AI in to help the workers know how to respond to incoming tickets, incoming calls. And what they found was AI improved productivity across the board and pretty significantly. But the biggest improvement was for the workers with the least experience. And it was something like a 30 or 40% increase in their productivity thanks to AI. So if you could go to if you have clients that are in call centers, and you could say, hey, we can work with you on AI-enabled workers, or people who are comfortable using AI if they've got AI systems, or you're in IT, and you can recruit people who have really learned how to use tools like Copilot to develop code with an AI assistant, those people are going to be more productive. And staffing companies that have mastered not just providing talent, but talent that's good working hand in hand with AI are going to have an advantage over staffing companies who don't make that part of their sales pitch. All right, how can you prepare for next year? Now, there was a comment that just came in. We're seeing the talent shortage making candidates less likely to take temp positions, formerly temp positions moving to direct hire. And thank you all for submitting that, because that is pretty normal. Is right now people are afraid of losing their jobs. So when we're in a market that there's jobs everywhere, jumping for a temp opportunity that could lead to full-time employment if you're a rock star, it's not that scary. But when you're in a market where you're afraid that if I lose my job, I might not get the next one, I'm not going to leave full-time employment for a temporary role. So you may need to look at your clients that have temp to hire roles and saying, okay, what can we do to add more assurance that this will be direct hire? Should we go directly to a direct hire opportunity? Should we lay out the specific criteria that we're going to use? Should we pay more in the temporary phase to get top candidates to be willing to take on the job? You need creative strategies working with your clients to attract talent, because Walt, I totally agree with you. It's hard to get people to take temp jobs, even temp to hire jobs, if you were dependent on people being willing to leave full-time jobs for those roles. All right, so let's get back to talking about preparations for next year. So we're going to start by going back in time, because what's the statement? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So in this particular case, those who do know history are going to succeed because of it. So we're going to look back. This next set of lessons are things that we learned working with clients in past recessions. So one of the nice things about Haley Marketing is we've been around for a long time. I had hair on the top of my head when we started this company. And moving forward to today, we've been through 3 different recessions that all had very different looks and feels. We had one in 2001 that's a lot like what healthcare is going through. There was an artificial boom in the dot-com era and the Y2K crisis in IT contract staffing that fell off a cliff in 2001, and there was a backlash against IT staffing companies. We lived through that. We saw what happened. 2009, we had the Great Recession. Everybody felt that, except maybe parts of IT, maybe parts of healthcare, and anybody who supplied talent for the collections industry. So we saw how companies thrived and survived and recovered faster. And then in 2020, we had a different kind of recession with the COVID cliff that we fell off of. And if you were in non-essential business, or if you're in hospitality, you just watched your business collapse, whereas other segments of the industry boomed during that time. So we have experience from 3 different recessions with 3 different feels to tell you what worked in the past. And lesson number 1 here is the most obvious: get closer to your clients. Now, your clients may be saying, I don't need to get closer to you, Mr. and Ms. Staffing Company, because I don't need you right now. But the practical reality is they do need you right now, because they need to think about what's their talent strategy going to be for next year. How will they drive growth if they're cutting their workforce? How will they manage costs if their own business slows down? How are they going to manage employment risk? How are they going to manage their own tightening work comp next year? So there are so many reasons that you can help them if you understand what's going on in their business and you're proactively planning with them. You're sitting down to help them map out their workforce needs for next year. You're sitting down to look at their seasonality, their projects, their major goals, and you're basically asking them the question, how's this going to impact talent? Who are you hiring? Where are you hiring? What roles are you going to be short on? What roles are you going to need growth on? Then once you've had the plans, then you want to start to build your networks. And I'm going to thank my friend Mike Jackatote from Butler Street, who taught me about the concept of 3x3 networks. So I want to go 3 wide and 3 deep in relationships. So every client, I know people in 3 different areas of the company, and I know people 3 deep at different levels. And if I were you right now and I owned a staffing company, I would build a spreadsheet listing all of my clients. And for each client, can I go 3 wide and 3 deep? And I'd start making these little mini org charts of who do I know, and having my sales team start to fill in the blanks. Who do I know? What's the strength of the relationship? It's green if it's a strong relationship. It's red if I have no relationship. If it's yellow, if I'm not sure. And I look at all of my greens first and say, how can I build on those strengths? Then I look at my reds next. Where don't I know people? Where am I at risk because my relationship is too thin? And I start trying to flip the reds to at least yellows. And then the yellows, I look at a plan of getting closer to them to build relationships and turn them to green. Because the more 3x3 networks you have in green, the more job orders you're going to get and the less risk you have if that company cuts back on some of their use of staffing. First call agreements, ancient concept in the industry. People have done it for decades. But how many of them do you have? Do you give your clients incentives for making you the first call or an exclusivity? So if you can look at your clients and your relationships and say, hey, I know you're trying to save money. Demand's going to be down. If we can be the first call and give us an extra whatever amount of time to start filling orders, we'll give you a break on the price. Next one is it's a business school tactic. They talk about building moats. So it's one of the things they taught me in graduate school is how do you increase switching costs, which means I want to make it so easy, so frictionless for my clients to work with me that they don't have an incentive to look at anybody else. In fact, if they look at another staffing company, they're kind of closing their eyes going, ugh, it's going to be so much work to get them up to speed. So do you have custom reporting built just for that client? Do you have onboarding programs that are specific to that individual organization. So it's really easy for you to bring in temps and that they arrive ready to work. Are you doing technology integration? Maybe having your own VMS system. We're seeing more of that. Or your own mobile apps where the client's job orders are already there. It's super quick for them to place an order or approve time. The more you can make it frictionless working with you so that going to somebody else means they have to reinvent a wheel, the more they're not going to want to switch. So you want to look at everything that's a portion of your service delivery process and say, how easy is it for someone to leave us? And anywhere that it's easy, can we say, hey, can we do more so that leaving us would actually be somewhat painful for the client because we're so easy to work with? So great book on this. I think it's my only book recommendation today, but I love book recommendations on this. This one's from Joey Coleman called Never Lose a Customer Again. And it sort of walks through everything that you should be doing starting in your sales process through credit and collections to make sure you're providing not just a great client experience, great candidate experience, but really making sure you're not losing clients, you're cross-selling, you're upselling, you're retaining, you're building referrals. Great book, highly recommended. Speaking of cross-selling and upselling, the second lesson is to maximize your client relationships. So upselling means, can I get more of what we're already selling to this company? So for most of you listening in today, your clients work with more than one staffing company. You don't have an exclusive on most of your clients. So where you don't have an exclusive, you want to get close to your clients to figure out what would it take for us to get a little more of your business. If we're getting 20% today, what would we have to do to get 25%? Is it a matter of quality, speed? Is it the relationship? Is it the first call agreement? How could we sell more so that we become your favorite supplier of staffing services? Then cross-selling. Cross-selling is wickedly hard. It seems easy, right? I do clerical staffing and I can also do accounting. So when they need an accounting person, they should call us. Or I do a lot of light industrial. So when they need somebody in an admin role, they should call us. But clients don't think of us that way. What's the problem? Why not? Well, think of it yourself. When you buy something from a store, you buy something as a business from another business, whatever you purchased in your mind, that's all that company does. So you think of them for just that one thing. You don't think of them for anything else. You don't think of even going to them to find out what else could they do for you. So as a vendor to the company, you need to proactively build your 3x3 network and figure out where are there cross-selling opportunities that are in the red, people we don't know, relationships we don't have. Where do we need to grow those relationships? So how can we first get endorsements, testimonials, and case studies from the people we serve? How can we get internal referrals from those people to other departments? How can we get introductions? And then how do we have a marketing program combined with our sales efforts to build relationships with those cross-sell opportunities so our clients truly do know everything we're capable of doing? If we can cross-sell and upsell our clients, it's kind of as the diagram shows, that is the shortest path to driving growth in a weak market, the shortest path to maximizing your profitability, because your cost of service delivery is also lower with an existing account than it is with a new account. All right, I said it once, maybe twice already, but speed wins in a down market. We've learned this in past recessions. There's fewer job orders. The person who can fill first with the right talent is most likely to win. So this is a bit counterintuitive, but you need to get better at recruiting. You need to spend your recruiting dollars more wisely. This is a time to look at programmatic job advertising if you're not doing it already. This is a time to extend your recruiting capabilities with technology, with automation, so that we have a game plan for reactivations, assignment extensions, building referrals. We're nurturing relationships with our candidates. Because if we can build our recruiting capacity, not just in terms of recruiters, but all the ways we can engage talent, we will get people to our job openings quicker than anybody else. This is where technology comes into play. This is where mobile apps are starting to become super important because I can get jobs to people very quickly. I can get their feedback and I can get those candidates right to the employer. This is where AI and automation are critical to accelerating your time to fill. AI to help you identify opportunities, to write better content, and automation to build those workflows, those journeys that enable you to get feedback from clients and candidates faster, to strengthen relationships, to ask for referrals, to extend assignments, to improve candidate, current associate retention. Big thing in 2024 is going to be making sure it's not just about speed, but also you have a process to look at quality. How do we add more screening to the process? I know we had a job opening recently and we had 600 candidates. And I believe out of 600, we interviewed 2, maybe 1. I know we had 1 make it to a second round of interviews, 1 out of 600. So your clients, and you're feeling it, are getting overwhelmed with quantity of response. How can you use AI automation? For those of you who use our career portal, using those pre-qualification questions, which are sort of knockout questions, and those post-qualification, which are like pre-interview questions, to help with the screening so you're providing better candidates at a faster pace. All right, this is a hard one, but really important in a down market is looking at your client concentration. So how much of your revenue comes from your top companies, your top clients? Typically, most staffing companies, there's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. 80% of your revenue or more comes from 20% or fewer of your clients. In a down market, that's super risky because if those giant accounts cut back or, God forbid, stop using you, it puts a serious risk to your business. So how do you reduce client concentration? Well, you want to get to the point, ideally, where no client's more than 20% of your sales, and even better if you can get to the point where no client is more than 10%. It's hard to bring in new big accounts. They have multiple vendors. Everyone's calling on them. I mean, and I know it's what everybody listening in today wants, but they're hard to win. So it may be better to figure out who's really our ideal new client, the ideal client persona. And what that means is, what do they look like? What industry are they in? How big are they? What kind of staffing do they use? What's their attitude towards working with staffing companies? Are they fast? Are they slow? Do we deal with HR? Do we deal with hiring managers? Write out the profile in as much detail as you can as what your ideal customer looks like. And then you can build a marketing strategy to go after them using account-based marketing, integrated direct marketing, automation platforms to go after more of your ideal clients. And don't neglect the onesie-twosie clients, the ones that have potential for growth. I've talked to multiple staffing companies in the last month who they don't want onesie-twosie. Business is down and they want to catch up all in one fell swoop. So they want another big client. Well, there's less competition going after the onesie-twosie accounts. And yeah, it may take a ton of them to make up for a big account you lost, but if your average client hires 20 people, then you need 10 or 20 little accounts to make up for one average account. If they're 10 people, you can do the math, 5 to 10 new clients. But there's so much less competition going after the small business buyer that it's easy to make your staffing company stand out. It's also easier to get better margins, and it's probably easier to get more direct hire business from them. You just have to be prepared to show them the value you can provide in this market. And then if they're growing businesses, great, you become their staffing partner and they don't have multiple staffing vendors. It's about figuring out where your competition isn't going. Let's not look at a standing operating procedure for selling. Let's look at a differentiated operating procedure. Where isn't everybody else going? If it's a certain industry, it's probably unlikely there are many industry staffing companies aren't going after, but maybe there's a new industry. Maybe there's a technology, a process that you can be really good at and going after. I know some people in manufacturing and light industrial staffing that really know lean manufacturing. And so they go in talking to plant managers about how to make their workforce more lean. And even though they're selling light industrial staffing, just like their competitors, they're going where the competition isn't going, to a C-level decision maker talking about lean manufacturing. The idea is Think about ways to go where your client isn't going in terms of your expertise, the problems you can solve, what you want to be known for. Don't just be another staffing company that's good at supplying labor. Be another staffing company that's an expert at solving specific kinds of problems for specific kinds of companies. And I like this diagram, even though it's a little confusing to look at, but starting to think about, if industry B is your core, well, what are other directions that you can go? Looking at the industry value chain. So who are the suppliers to your current clients? Who do they sell to? Can I move down to industry A, their suppliers? Can I move up to industry C? Because I already have expertise in industry B. Or can I find ways to diversify to other people who are like industry B, but in industries that look similar but aren't the same? Because every time I can expand up or down the value chain or to a tangentially related industry, I open up the potential to find new customers that I'm not selling to now, but I leverage my expertise to create differentiation going to those new industries. Change your messaging. Biggie right now. I'm seeing a lot of staffing companies using marketing campaigns that basically say, here's why our company's great. Here's why we are a better staffing firm. And I ask those companies, how are the campaigns working? And the answer is invariably they're not. Because in this economy, it's really about what problems can you solve? You know your customers. You know what their frustrations are with staffing, with talent, with the workforce, with turnover, with the cost of labor, with productivity. You know the issues in their industry. Now look at those issues, those problems, and say, how could we as a staffing company make an impact on those issues? Can we convert more of their fixed expenses to variable through temporary staffing? Can we reduce turnover? Can we reduce their hiring risk? Can we increase focus on their core priorities through temporary staffing? Can we reduce their overall employment risk? What problems are you really good at solving? Because in this economy, the companies that get more job orders are the companies that provide solutions to problems, not just staffing services. And then related to that is understanding and making sure your salespeople truly understand the economics of staffing. So how do staffing services cut costs? How do staffing services drive productivity gains? How do staffing services manage employment risk? What's the value to a company of being more proactive in workforce planning and not waiting until Friday afternoon to decide they need workers on Monday? The more you can teach people about how to be better consumers, better users of staffing, not just staffing services, but managing their own workforce, the more opportunities you create for selling staffing services. And put yourself in the client's shoes. This is what I mentioned earlier about being that HR person. If you're getting the same message from lots of different companies, you're going to feel really good about hearing from somebody who looks and sounds different, somebody who demonstrates they understand what you need as a buyer of staffing services. One of the things I like to recommend to staffing companies is so much of what you do as a service is really hard, if not impossible, to differentiate. But the one thing nobody can take from anybody listening in today is that you can stand out based on your company's mission, vision, and values, who you are as an organization, the reason you exist, the value you play in the world, and how you are the best in the world at solving certain types of problems. Those should be part of your mission, vision, and values. And if you're communicating that purpose to your internal employees and that purpose to your clients, and your mission is aligned with what your clients need, then you are driving sales opportunities in a way that's differentiating your company from everybody else and doesn't sound anything like the message that 99% of those 21,000 staffing companies are sending right now. Diversification. Great strategy in a down market, but can be risky as heck. So diversification, and I like this little graphic that I found, is thinking about finding new markets and new products. So in staffing, we think about service line extensions. Oh, I'm doing clerical, let's add on industrial. Or in 2009, a lot of it was, let's add on IT, let's add on healthcare, because those were the growing segments. So you can add on those new products, those service line extensions. Just have to be really careful that you're good at servicing them, because as soon as you go into that new service, you're taking on all new competitors. And those competitors are already specialists in those areas. So you got to figure out how we're going to beat them at their own game. You can look at geographic expansion. That's market development. Are there markets that are doing better than your hometown? Would it make sense to follow your clients into new markets, or just to open up a new office, or go buy somebody through mergers and acquisitions to jump into a market that's growing faster than your hometown? How about new business models? We've seen online staffing come out. 17, 18 years ago, VMS and MSP were relatively new business models, but they're forms of staffing, and RPO was a new business model. What will be the next new business model? Well, I've mentioned on past podcasts, we were talking to a company, I think it was last year, who wanted to make staffing sold as a recurring service, more like a Netflix, and that the way they charge for recruiting services was on a fixed monthly retainer kind of a fee to provide recruiting support. But they got rid of the giant placement fee and reduced that amount, so they made their services more affordable. They just built a new business model. And that's that upper right corner, the diversification is, can I find new products and new markets and put them together to create entirely new business opportunities? But you see the word intelligently on there. Most diversification efforts fail. People aren't really committed to them. They don't put the money behind them. They don't put the people behind them. They don't put and get the expertise they need to execute. So if you're going to follow any of these strategies, make sure you're taking the time and making the investment to do it right. Improving efficiency. This is an easy way to improve your profitability. I may have a little bit less business next year, I may be flat, but I can be more profitable if I increase efficiency. So efficiency comes from people, process, and technology. So automation and digital transportation. I think this is probably the 7th year in a row that automation and digital transportation have been top issues in the staffing industry. Maybe it's more than that. But thanks to AI, it exploded again last year. And now there's more pressure than ever to incorporate AI to accelerate digital transformation so that people can engage with us more online, more through mobile apps than just through face-to-face relationships. I was talking to a company this morning. He said, you know what? I've been thinking that it's time to eliminate face-to-face interviews for our industrial workforce. And that's always been heresy, but I think I can get the same level of quality and access to a lot more people if I don't make them come into the office for an interview. I don't know what he's going to do with that, but he's just thinking about changing his process to make himself more efficient at how he's recruiting. Offshoring. Your clients are looking at global talent. I know if you went back for Haley Marketing, 3 years ago, we didn't have anybody overseas. And now we have 10 people, full-time employees on our team that are offshore. They give us capacity 24/7. They provide skills that are very needed. They're a great part of the team. So inside your staffing business, whether it's virtual assistants or other offshore support, are you using people to augment your internal capabilities or to make it so you're able to work around the clock without making your people actually work more hours? Are you outsourcing? Are there things you're doing in-house that could be done for less cost if you outsourced? So I know a lot of people took various functions inside their business to gain control over the past several years. It may be time to look at them again to say, you know what? If we look at what we're really spending, all the salaries and all the things that go with those salaries and all the additional support those people need, are we saving any money by doing it in-house? And the make or the build versus buy decision can reverse itself where it's smarter to go outside. When it comes to software development, most people buy an ATS, they don't build one because it makes more sense to outsource that. But it comes to a lot of other functions, we're doing everything in-house when it may or may not make sense to outsource. And AI, which we're going to get to more in just a bit, but I told you it had to be in every presentation. So we're going to get more into it in just a minute. And then building in flexible capacity. We're in the staffing business. We should be really good at scaling operations up or down. How many temps, how many consultants, contractors are you using to scale recruiting, to scale sales? Any? So do you have the capacity to take on bigger clients? Do you have partnership agreements with other companies that you like and trust where you could work together? Maybe jointly selling, jointly servicing, sort of a quasi merger to build that flexible capacity in when you need it. We are seeing more examples of that coopetition, companies figuring out how to cooperate that would normally be competitors because it may allow them to take on bigger accounts. or it may allow them to win more business and collectively fill more orders faster by cooperating than it does just going head to head and competing. Lesson 8, managing cash more aggressively. We've got some advice coming up from some outside people, and that was one of the big pieces of advice is, you got to make sure AR is aggressively managed because your clients are going to extend payments, and in staffing that is so painful because you're floating your payroll at a very high cost. So we need to collect aggressively. We may need to incentivize people to pay faster so they don't stretch payment terms to 60, 90, and 120 days. Can we give them a discount for faster invoice payment? Can we shop our internal expenses? Go audit all of your recurring payments. It's kind of like looking at all the subscriptions we bought during COVID because we were stuck at home. So we bought Netflix and Apple TV Plus, and we bought HBO Max, and now we're going, I don't watch any of this stuff. We did it in our business too. And we've added all these recurring expenses that we need to go shop to figure out, are there better ways to get it done? I don't know about you, but I had a bit of sticker shock at the 2024 increase in healthcare costs. In our core market in Buffalo, it was something like 12%, but in some of our remote work jobs, it was 50% increase in the cost of healthcare. Got to look for ways to shop and see if there's anything that can be done to better control those expenses that are necessary to run your business. This is really hard in staffing, but if there's opportunities to pay down debt or build a cash cushion, you're going to have ups and downs this year coming up. So the more cash you're sitting on, the better it is to get through it. I know in staffing, it's really hard to have any cash to sit on because payroll expense comes before bill invoice payment. But this is a time to do all you can to keep the money in the company. And I mentioned it, just repeating it, evaluating those build versus buy decisions, and can you outsource cheaper? All right, last lesson in this section. You knew I was going to talk about this one. Get more aggressive about marketing. So you got to increase your visibility. People need to know you're out there. You need to strengthen your positioning. What are you known for? What problems can you solve? Don't just be another staffing company. You need to improve the impact of your sales efforts using better processes and better tools. That includes automation, video is part of your sales process, asynchronous selling, using integrated direct marketing and account-based marketing to make salespeople more productive. You need to make sure you keep your company top of mind with every current client, every former client, every prospect. At least once a month, you're touching base with something that adds value. You're doing skill marketing, you're cross-selling. This chart, unfortunately, we have 7 minutes left, so I'm not going to get into a lot of depth, and we still have a lot of slides to cover. I'll be happy to, well, actually, it's in the presentation, but this breaks down how to improve selling. On one side, you can improve what your sales team is doing with better process and better tools. On the other side, you can get more people coming to you with a website that converts better, getting found through digital marketing, using events and OPS, other people's stages, influencers to bring more people to you. You want to look at how you're selling today and incorporate as many different things into your lead generation activities as you can from this chart. You want to have growth marketing with your existing clients to upsell and cross-sell. That's what growth marketing is all about. You want to use that direct marketing to improve your sales process, touching people in a multi-step process with multiple channels of communication, and not just email, just digital outreach, but the phone, physical mailings, packages, drop-offs. Yes, that sounds old school, but they make a much bigger impact to get people's attention. You want to build a digital marketing system and conversion funnels with signature content, ideas, expertise that you own, using search engine optimization, paid advertising, social media to get that content found, to get your company found, using automation and lead tracking to stay top of mind, to re-engage people, to actually see who's coming to your website every day, and then using email and text as a way to nurture clients, prospects, former clients, candidate relationships to bring in more repeat and more referral business. For those of you, hopefully everybody on this, you're already getting our weekly ideas. So if you're not, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, we have an updated version of our email newsletter. It's called the Smart Ideas Weekly. go to our website and opt in for it. It's right under resources. And you will get a quick idea every single week. Last 2 weeks were fun. I did one on the problems with automation and lead prospecting. And our CMO, Jeff Stotts, did a rebuttal on all the benefits of automation for lead generation. So those are really fun. But every week we're sharing ideas to help you with your marketing. All right, prepping for next year. I'm going to go through a bunch of bullets fast. I'm going to apologize. I said at the beginning I have too much content, but I don't want to miss some of the final slides that are in here. So some issues to address. Number one, AI. You're going to use it for content creation, but the ease of content creation is going to make it harder to create really good content. You're going to need to be much more strategic in how you create content. It's going to require more use of AI for personalization, ideally to specific individuals, at a minimum to specific groups of clients. You're going to need to do more automation, more process automation to improve efficiency, using AI to drive communications and provide a human-like experience, whether it's through a chatbot on your website or voice-based outreach. You're going to use AI for training, actually using it to train salespeople and let the AI act as your toughest customer to help people learn how to handle sales situations, how to recruit better. You're going to use it to provide faster response and better quality content because AI is going to up the game for everybody. Just thinking I can use AI and crank out content and it's going to be cheap. It's going to be a recipe for disaster. You're going to need to use AI, but use AI better. The next generation, what's coming next? What we're going to see in 2024, this is my guess. You're going to see more video AI used for training, job posts, employment branding, actual videos being created directly with AI. Right now, the technology is pretty rudimentary. We're going to see more conversational systems for recruiter outreach and real chatbots that engage people. We're already seeing those being integrated into the industry. We're going to see microbots being created for automation. If you haven't played with creating your own GPTs, where you can automate steps with ChatGPT to create process automation, it's really cool. You're going to do data and trend analysis to do better predictive analytics of what clients should you be talking to and make sure the sales team knows who to follow up with. And then you're going to get to the point where you have intelligent agents that are trained on all your company's knowledge that'll be able to provide answers to questions in your company's voice with the right context, text and voice-based response. Everything listed here already exists today. I think the version 2 you'll see in 2024 is going to be something we all need to incorporate. The question you're going to have to answer is how will you supply clients? Help your clients, use AI in their operations and supply AI-enabled talent. So again, you're going to get the slides here. I know we're coming up on the end of the hour. I'm going to go over by a few minutes because I don't want to miss any of this content. I apologize. I told you I put too much stuff in here. But for those who have to get off at the top of the hour, all of this will be in the slides. It's going to be an election year. Yuck. So what does that mean? Lots of noise. Getting through to people is going to be hard. But the big thing is there's going to be so much negativity. It's already started. So people are going to crave authenticity, calm, positivity. Can you be the voice of reason? I'm not suggesting you do political marketing. Please don't. But your marketing should not be about screaming at people. It should be about being real people, being authentic, being calming, always sharing good ideas and making people feel good. That will make people want to do business with you next year. So how will you change your sales, marketing, and recruiting to have the right tone, the right voice, and the right content? Globalization, it's been a trend going on for 20 years, and it's going to continue. Why? Because offshoring has already gotten to the point where it's 70% increase in IT roles in the past few years alone. We're going to see more of that because it's so easy to have people working anywhere. Right now, offshore staffing is growing twice as fast as traditional staffing. Do you provide offshore staffing services? Can you partner with someone who does? This is really going to be something to look at is should offshoring be a part of your service offering in 2024, either directly or with somebody else? Gig and fractional work. You can get a fractional everything now. So our relationship with work is changing. From Uber to DoorDash to fractional CEOs, people are breaking job functions down into tasks and outsourcing those tasks. Online demanding staffing platforms are going to grow from 164 million to 386 million in the next 4 years, almost a 15% average annual growth rate. Are you providing any sort of online staffing platform? Are you able to provide more task-based solutions, not people-based solutions? How will you capitalize on this trend? Last issue, customer experience versus efficiency. There's this battle between being in a relationship business and a customer experience business, but managing costs. So how your clients and candidates react to your services are going to make or break your reputation. And if you're just using technology and getting efficient and not building relationships, you're in trouble. If you're just building relationships and you're not getting more efficient, you're going to have trouble staying profitable. So you need to sort of balance it to avoid margin compression. So you need to map out everything in your customer experience, streamline, get rid of things that you don't need to do, simplify, make things easier, friction-free for your clients, your candidates, your internal team, automate where you can to get rid of low-value repetitive tasks, whether that automation is, a sense journey or that automation is a true robotic process automation to automate the keys you're punching on the keyboard. And then to elevate anything that's left, you elevate your team to do more high-level consulting and relationship building, and you train your team to be better at that. In today's market, clients are going to expect your service to be as seamless as Amazon, as engaging as Disney, and as cost-efficient as Walmart. You need to figure out how can you make your CX efficient and get rid of the conflict between the two. All right, we're at 3:02, but I asked a bunch of other industry consultants for their predictions for next year. So let me quickly share what they said, and then we'll call it quits for today. All right, so one of my favorites, Mike Jackatote, told me, and I've got some more from him in just a minute, you have to work harder, twice the effort for half the results. It's just reality. You got to work smarter. You got to build a deliberate brand for your business, target your ideal clients. You have to be bold if you're going to get anyone's attention, but don't raise their stress. You have to be relevant to the problems people are facing to engage their interests. You have to prove your value. Don't say you're better, demonstrate it with your processes, your tools, your case studies, the results you've delivered. You have to be persistent and nurture relationships until they're ready to make a change. There's no one thing you can do next year. It's not AI, it's not automation, it's not just service. It's the combination of everything we've talked about today that you're going to need to outperform the industry and drive growth in 2024. So if you look at this, this is the Eisenhower box. You're going to look at your calendar and say, what's important, what's not important, what's urgent, what's not urgent. And you're going to focus on your time on the urgent and important. And then look at this, you can delegate the less important but urgent, and you get rid of the less urgent, less important. Just don't do it. All right, and I promised you some advice from some others. So more from Mike at Butler Street. Mike, I believe AI will be the biggest change not only in our lifetime, but the biggest change in the history of our lifetimes. Think differently. Think augmented intelligence. AI is not the enemy. It's going to make your company better. What can you do better with AI? Figure out the tasks and figure out how to integrate AI into your process. You're going to be able to drive productivity gains that will determine who wins and who loses in staffing. And you've got not very long to do it. Within 24 months, if you're not faster than the competition because of AI, you're going to be the dinosaur that can't keep up. His prediction for next year, a mild decline. So thank you, Mike. Our next industry consultant, Tom Erb. Don't ever stop selling or recruiting. We never have the perfect mix of available talent and orders. So the pendulum goes back and forth. When orders are slow, strengthen your candidate network so that you can fill them when orders are plentiful. Keep bringing in clients even when you have a scarcity of talent because you need a place for every placeable candidate. And Tom said, small increase, but he's an eternal optimist. So hoping it'll be a really good year for the industry. Next up, Terry Keating, the CEO at Access Capital. Focus on fundamentals. The pandemic made it easy to see crazy growth and outsized margins. That's gone. So you need to have a better strategic focus, better execution. You need to focus on cost containment. His prediction for next year, a small increase. Tom Kosnick, president of Vices Group. A lot of jobs are currently forgetting about, a lot of staff firms are currently forgetting about recruiting and focusing on sales, sales, sales. Tom's saying that's a mistake. It's going to swing back. That pendulum just mentioned. Build your database 10x is Tom's recommendation. And get smart with technology. Don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to do everything, as Tom said, you don't have to boil the ocean. Figure out where technology fits your business. What's the business model you're attempting to implement to beat the competition? What technology would support your business model? You do need automation and AI, but use the tools in a smart way and be agile about putting them in and fixing them and improving them and putting them in and fixing them and improving them. On the sales side, Tom's advice is keep it simple. Know who you're trying to target. Have a really great value proposition for that type of buyer and a simple sales process your team will follow. And internal employees, I like Tom, he's the only one who had recommendations here. Get your own hiring process down so you can nail it getting top talent for your internal roles. Get your onboarding down so that you're not just throwing people to the fires and letting them sink or swim. That's terrible onboarding, but it's a lot of people in the industry are doing. You need to have a very deliberate onboarding process. And then get the employee engagement practice down. I love this. Stop bitching about millennials and Gen Z. They're becoming the largest part of the workforce, and really we need to engage with people at all levels. And that, lastly, Tom's advice was invest in management training. We need to build more mid-level leaders. His prediction, like everybody else, slow growth, but Tom says sees it really picking up in the second half of next year. All right, and from somebody on the financial side, Jerry Grady at UHY, keep your eye on the overall ball. Have KPIs to monitor all your financial metrics. Workers' comp, Jerry said it's going to go up a lot next year. So really, you need to get great at risk management. That could be a make or break it for everybody in industrial staffing in 2024. Jerry said that cyber and ransomware will be a top issue we all face, and we need to get better at ensuring our teams are not reacting to cyber threats, not clicking on those emails they shouldn't be clicking on, especially with work from home. And he's the only one who mentioned this. In downturns, you will see more employee fraud, and that means not just internal people from your temps. So you need to be really proactive about looking at your bank statements, your check payments, your payroll, to make sure you're only sending out dollars that are approved to go out the door. And he sees a small increase for next year. All right, we did it. Apologies for going over, but just too much good stuff to share. And I didn't even get to the predictions for next year. So I will send that out. We'll put a blog out. All of these slides will be in the download that goes with this recording. So thank you very much for being part of today's webinar. There are a couple of questions. I'll stay on to answer them. Last but not least, this was part one of 2 webinars this month. So you get to hear me thinking about the future, and I called in some credits from some friends to get their ideas. And in a week, we're actually doing our Insights podcast, part of Secrets of Staffing Success, as a webinar live with several of the industry's top content creators to get their take on what you need to do for next year. For all of us at Haley Marketing, thank you so much for being part of today's Lunch with Haley webinar. And as promised, I'm going to check out the questions now and see what I can stay on and answer. Thank you so much. All right. Is there recommended training for sales and marketers to use AI? Well, I don't know of one source for it. Some of the sources I follow are proprietary to entrepreneurs or organizations, so I can't get into those. But I would start with simply Googling it. There is an unbelievable amount. If you just say best practices for AI in marketing and best practices for AI in selling, start with Google, start with YouTube. You will find an incredible amount of free training to get you started on what you can do with these tools. Most is focused on content creation, which is great. Another resource I use is called There's an AI for that. So if you've got a specific something you're trying to accomplish, you go to there'sanaiforthat.com, you type in what you're trying to do, and it'll give you the names of all the AI products you might use to help. All right, and then I had another question about new to client acquisition for staffing marketing, previously in recruiting. Traditional streaming advertising work for applicants. Has Haley Marketing ever seen this work for attracting clients? The answer is, yeah. If you look at pay-per-click advertising, whether it's search advertising, display advertising, social advertising, it absolutely can work. But very often, unless you're doing it like targeting on LinkedIn, it's hard to segregate just employers from job seekers because people see your ads, and if they're a job seeker, especially when there's slightly fewer jobs, they're going to respond. But what you need to do in your paid advertising is think of, what am I offering? Because in paid advertising, it really is an advertisement for something. Don't make it just about your company. Make it about a solution to a problem the employer is having. Offer content, offer a consultation, offer a video someone can watch. If you make your advertising about things that appeal to employers, you're more likely to get response that is from employers and not from the job seekers. But to our anonymous attendee who asked the question, thank you. You can absolutely use paid advertising. Our PPC team is really good at doing this and would love to help if you need help implementing those ideas. Okay, those are all the questions that came in. Again, thanks you everybody for being part of today's Lunch with Haley event.